1. Today we are diving into one of the most famous chess games in history. Game 1 of the 1972 World Chess Championship played in Reykjavik between Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer. This was the start of the match of the century, a battle between calm Soviet experience and daring American genius. Grab your board and follow along as we explore each move and the strategies behind them. Spassky opens with pawn to d4, claiming the center. Fischer responds knight to f6, developing his piece and controlling the center. Spassky plays pawn to c4, offering the queen's gambit. Fischer declines it with pawn to e6, a solid defense. Next, knight to c3 by white, developing and supporting d4. Fischer responds pawn to d5, striking at the center. Spassky develops knight to f3. Fischer plays bishop to b4, the Nimzo-Indian defense, pinning the knight and applying pressure. White plays pawn to e3, reinforcing the center and preparing to develop the bishop. Fischer castles kingside, keeping his king safe. Spassky develops bishop to d3, eyeing the kingside and controlling key diagonals. Fischer plays pawn to c5, striking at white's center. Both sides castle. White castles kingside, securing the king. Fischer develops knight to c6, reinforcing the center. Spassky pushes pawn to a3, attacking the bishop on b4. Fischer retreats bishop to a5, maintaining the pin. Spassky repositions knight to e2, planning to bring it to g3 or c3 later for flexibility. Fischer captures pawn takes c4, opening lines. Spassky recaptures bishop takes c4, keeping control of the center. Fischer plays bishop to b6, a safe square controlling the long diagonal. Spassky opens the center with pawn takes c5, aiming to gain space and force exchanges. Fischer simplifies with queen takes d1. Spassky recaptures rook takes d1. Fischer captures bishop takes c5, activating his pieces. Spassky pushes pawn to b4, gaining queenside space. Fischer retreats bishop to e7, maintaining flexibility. Spassky develops bishop to b2, controlling long diagonals. Fischer plays bishop to d7, connecting rooks. Spassky moves rook to c1, occupying the open file. Fischer places rook to d8, contesting the d file. White maneuvers knight to d4, centralizing the knight. Fischer trades knight takes d4, knight takes d4, simplifying. Spassky responds bishop to b3, defending. Fischer exchanges bishop takes b3, knight takes b3. White trades rooks, rook takes d1, rook takes d1. Fischer activates rook to c8, aiming at the open file. The kings start moving king to f1 by white, king to f8 by black. Spassky plays king to e2, centralizing. Fischer develops knight to e4, creating threats. White plays rook to c1. Fischer trades rook takes c1, bishop takes c1. Then Fischer strengthens pawn to f6, supporting the knight. Spassky advances knight to a5, eyeing weak squares. Fischer replies knight to d6, guarding key points. White king moves king to d3, preparing for the endgame. Fischer retreats bishop to d8. White maneuvers knight to c4, targeting central squares. Fischer plays bishop to c7. White trades knight takes d6, bishop takes d6, opening the position. Spassky pushes pawn to b5, aiming to create a passed pawn. Fischer greedily captures bishop takes h2, a risky pawn grab. Spassky plays pawn to g3, defending his king. Fischer responds pawn to h5, starting an attack. The kings march king to e2, h4, king to f3, king to e7, king to g2, pawn takes g3, king takes g3, bishop takes g3, king takes g3. Fischer plays king to d6. Spassky advances pawn to f4, building queenside pressure. Fischer plays king to d5, trying to centralize. White develops bishop to a3, controlling squares and blocking the black king. Fischer plays king to e4. White blocks with bishop to c5. Fischer pushes pawn to a6. But Spassky ignores and pushes pawn to b6, creating a dangerous passed pawn. Fischer pushes pawn to f5, pawn to f4. But Spassky calmly moves king to h4, pawn takes f4, king takes f4. The endgame is intense, kings advance and pawns march. Moves include king h5, king f5, bishop e3, king e4, bishop f2, king f5, bishop h4, pawn e5, bishop g5, pawn e4, bishop e-choice, king f6, king g4, king e5, king g5, king d5, king f5, pawn a5, bishop f2, pawn g5, king takes g5, king f5, king c4, king takes e4, king takes a4, king d5, king b5, king d6. And that's it, Fischer resigns. Final result, Spassky wins 1-0. Spassky's calm, precise play dominated. Fischer's ambitious bishop sacrifice on h2 backfired, losing control of the kingside. Interactive quiz: when Spassky pushed b5, what would you do as black? Take the pawn or stay solid? Comment below. Could Fischer have saved the endgame after capturing h2? Share your ideas in the comments. If you enjoyed this analysis, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the next games of this historic match.